Good evening, your Skullgirls channel. I'm Metan and I'm going to be doing a live stick build with you today. Now, I haven't really done anything like this before and I'm relatively new to using Twitch, so you'll have to bear with me while I get acquainted with this. If you could please let me know whether or not my volume sounds alright and whether or not there's anything I need to know, like a camera's stopped working, please let me know in the Twitch chat. I've got that in front of me. Anyway, I'm glad to see that there are some people here who want to see this stream. So, without further ado, I'm going to make a start on this. So, just bear with me while I turn that on. Now, I do this. Oh, wait, that's the wrong way around. I want to do this one. Right. This is the view of my desk at the moment. So, if I just clear this stuff out of the way. If you have gone for a tech case like mine, then you'll receive a package very much like this. I've already got the fixings that go with it. Oh, hang on, my music's apparently a tad loud. If you just bear with me a second, just turn that down a sec. If that's better, please let me know. Anyway, you'll receive a package a lot like this. And you'll also receive some bags of screws, bolts, nuts, and bits of plastic that will come with it. And what I have done with those, and this is a very good tip for anybody that is building anything like this, is you get a muffin tin, you put all of your stuff in that muffin tin, because a lot of people will put things in pots and stuff just to arrange them, but you can knock those over and send them flying. With something like a muffin tin, you can't easily knock it over, and you can arrange things so that you can basically work with a workflow. So let me just move that out of the way. What I also have are these are the Seimitsu buttons. I've got two different sizes, some different variations on colour, and I've got some wire. Now that is what we're going to be making wiring looms from. I will show you what to do with that when it becomes the time, but first of all, let's start with unpacking and arranging all of this stuff and building the basic framework. To start off with, we're going to need this piece here on the bottom, which is this border piece. So let me just get that out of the way first. Just pop this behind me so that it's out of the way. Right, we'll need one of them. We will need reinforced top. And we will also need, let me just get this out of the way, that's the bottom piece. PCB holder, and we will need the I think it's in here, the support that's basically, it will often be used as a nameplate, but I've elected not to get it etched with anything, so it's just a plain support in my case. So just bear with me while I get this out of here. Let's put that slate panel up there. Right, let's start getting these out of the plastic wrappings that it came in. Stuck on the sellotape for a second. So that bit, and there's this bit. And there is the bottom frame. So this case comes with two different versions, one of which is not as strong, which has two of these border pieces in, and it replaces this top piece here. Now obviously, as I mentioned, it's not very strong, so what I've done is I've gone with a stronger version, the B model, where the other version is the A model. So if you're considering using one of these particular cases, that's something you need to consider. So I'm going to take this bottom piece, I'm going to start snapping it together, so that fits in there like that. And I think with this the groove goes towards the bottom, just in case you're using a version of this that has a groove for an exit cable rather than using a Nutrix socket. I've gone for the Nutrix socket, but I might as well follow the original plan anyway. So now you put that on there and you have the basic framework together for where the rest of the stick components are going to be. Now let me just take that bit of goo off the top there, because that is going to make it a little bit ugly, so let's just wipe that off. It's just something that's come from some of the tape, so let me just take that off. Just rub it off there, that should be right. I'm going to give this a bit of a clean up later on, and plus that afterwards the artwork's going to be going on the top, and that will for the most part cover some minor inconsistencies up. Also, I'm going to need to start screwing in the buttons and the joystick, and all that's going to go in here. I also notice actually that this design is slightly different from the original instructions. These screw holes here are countersunk, whereas on the original design of this it was not countersunk at all, so I may have to adapt and see what's going on with that. Now let me have a look here and see whether or not it's threaded there, because that is a possibility. No, it's not threaded in that, so right, let's go straight on to the next part of the assembly. Now these pieces here, if I just hold that up to the camera, is referred to by the manufacturer as diamond joints, and they're basically the corner pieces. You've got two sockets on there, which are basically you put a nut in there and then you screw the side panels into them, but there's also a captive one in the middle held in by this bracket that the top and bottom panels screw into. And the next thing we need to do is screw these onto here. Now there are two different screw sizes for this. There's a longer one and a shorter one, so let's see what we've been given in the pack that came with it. Now it looks like, let me just compare the lengths of these. These look like they're all the same length. Originally it was spec'd up so that you'd have longer ones in the bottom that would go through the that would go through the rubber feet that go onto the bottom of the case. So to start off with, I think that these are the right ones for here. Let me just test a screw in there. Yeah, they're definitely the screws that go in that. So I'm going to start screwing these onto the corner pieces. I only want to do them finger tight. I don't want to do them up particularly tightly, because Perspex can be a bit fragile and we don't want it to break before it's completely assembled. So let me just put that on there. Let's put this on here. I can always rearrange them later on if that's not quite right, but I think that's what the plan is. Now, one thing I should add is that if I hold this side on to the camera, you can just about see that there is a piece that pushes into the top that catches the nut in place. Those go on the underside of this so that it doesn't foul the top plate when you're screwing it in. Let me just try and move it there so that you can see it in a bit more detail through this magnifying glass. If I just hold it there so that it's in focus, you can see the top piece there. Anyway, if I just move that back out the way now, let's turn this around and continue with the assembly. You notice that my bottom framework is purple compared to the rest of it. You can spec this in any colour you like. That's one of the advantages of getting this particular case. But as I said, there are downsides to this particular case, but they fit in my budget for this, so I went for this. Now, the next step is to start adding the side panels to this. So, first of all, I'm going to get the side panels out of their packaging. Hopefully without getting sellotape all over them again. So, just get those out there. And these ones. Right, now, these pieces are not all the same. These have been pre-cut with holes for certain things. We've got this one here, which is the nutrient connector, which is where the USB goes. This one's the front panel, it doesn't have any at all. Also, one of the side panels is completely plain as well, but this one I've elected to put my start, select and home buttons in the side. Again, that's an optional. So I am going to put this on one of the sides. You can also have it cut so that they're on the same side as the nutrient connector if you so prefer. So if I move these out of the way, I'm going to start with the side panels. So I want this on the same side as the other buttons rather than being on the joystick side. So I'm going to start with these here and move this around like that. Just to line up those corner pieces again. Right, now, oops, I need to get those caps, one of those caps with nuts held in that corner piece. Hold this against it and then gently slide that in there and get it mated in with that particular nut and get them screwed up. Bear with me. You know what, this might actually be more easy to slide than afterwards. If I put that in with a screwdriver, that would make it a bit more useful. So let me just get my screwdrivers out and I'll use one of those instead. That one looks like it fits well, so let me just get that corner piece in the slot again. Take that out, the wrong bit. Again, we don't want to do these up too tight, we're just doing a very simple assembly here and then we're going to start working our way around. Also, we're going to need to do a little bit of adjustment afterwards just to make sure that everything is aligned up so that it doesn't have things at funny angles, which is a possibility. So let me just grab another one of those and just realign this corner piece up there. Get this one in. Now, I've got a question. How did you come to know how to build a stick? I've been able to build stuff and I've been working with electronics for a very long time, and being able to build something like this came as a bit of an extension to that. I've been doing hobby electronics while I was a kid because, well, I've just got the kind of brain for it. I ended up working in IT, which is also to a degree an extension of that. But these days I don't get to build much stuff, but I can apply those skills to this too. Right, next up, I'm just going to pop this on its edge and move it around there so that I can get to the underside of this as well. So I'm just feed that nut into the side of there and get this in there. Again, gently does it. Let's go and put the next one in. And then we can repeat with the other sides. Right, that's the first side panel on. Let's start working on the next one. If I just go like that, just for alignment, you can see that the stick is starting to come together, at least in terms of the casing. So this side with the PCB panel on, the plain front piece goes, so I'm just going to set that on top and get that lined up. Now you'll see that this is slightly shorter to allow for the sides to overlap slightly. Now we just move those out of the way and grab some of these nuts and start to fill in. Okay, let's get that there. Do the same to the other side. Right, that's one. Let's do the other one. So let's get that in there. Right, we've now got a basic framework in place, but I want to make sure that things are aligned up as it should be rather than being like that. So you just need to gently undo a one side panel, line them up to each other and then do them up again. That, slide down a little bit. And work our way around. This one's almost perfect actually. But not quite. I noticed that it's both of them up in the direction. We want it to be flush with this side, and it's down on both sides of the line. So I'm going to have to undo both of these. Right, the last piece, that one is slightly high, so let's just move that down a touch and then do that up. That side's pretty much there. Right, now all these side pieces are aligned, so we've got our basic framework. I just turn this over again, you can start to see how it's coming together. So you rest that on there. I might need to realign these side pieces just because I'm a perfectionist about that kind of thing, and you might want to do that. But you can start to see it's coming together. I've gone for the Seiger layout before you ask. Most of the sticks that you see commercially available these days, the row of buttons here are pretty much straight, whereas the version that I've got here is the Sega Player B layout, so you'll notice that it's curved around. That will be a lot more apparent once I get the buttons in place. So, if I just move this over there, over to the other side, I'm going to start working on getting the buttons in the front of the case. Now, here's the front panel that will go on top of that. The buttons obviously go through, but there is also artwork that needs to go in between that support panel and the rest of the stick. So, here is the artwork that I've prepared. Now, I'll just hold this up to the camera. You can see it's Marie, and rather than printing it on paper, I've printed it on overhead transparency paper. Now, with a laser printer, you'll get the toner on one side and the plastic on the other. Now, toner has this nasty habit of when it gets a bit warm, it will start to come unglued from the paper or the plastic that it's stuck on, and it will stick itself onto your plexiglass. You don't want that. So what I've also done is on the side where the toner is I've cut another blank piece of overhead transparency just to protect it from that happening. Now, you need to cut the holes slightly larger than the actual button shaft, because because you can, and because the edges of the buttons will cover that up. So let's get the buttons out. I've gone with the Seimitsu screwing buttons rather than the pushing ones because they're a little bit more versatile. They do cost a little bit more, but that shouldn't matter that much. You just move these out of the way. These are my crimps for attaching wires to these buttons. So just hold these up there. These are my crimps for attaching the wires to these buttons. So they came from Amazon. Let's see if I can get these lined up. They came from Amazon. They're relatively cheap things. You don't have to worry about messing them up too much. So I got lots. I got spares because I know I'm going to mess up at least one. And plus that, they came in packs of 20 and I needed more than 20. So some of the buttons I've gone for have got purple covers and some of them have got clear covers. I'm going to use the ones with purple covers to basically be my macro buttons to the side. I don't really use them for anything apart from the default mapping, but for completeness I decided to have an 8-button controller rather than a 6-button. I do use my fight stick for playing other games than fighting games, like because I have a slight RSI problem I use it for World of Tanks. And basically it's a lot better to use 8 buttons than 6 for that because of the nature of the game. It's designed for using the number row. So let me start feeding this through. Where did that ring go? There it goes. I've only got one and the rest of them should be easier. I'm also going to line up the blade connectors on the bottom of the buttons just to make it nice and neat and tidy when we're wiring them. So that one goes in there. Where's the other purple one? There it is. Something I should add is that the bottom of the buttons will go through the support panel on the top of the case, so you don't need to worry about these fouling anything after we've assembled this. You don't have to have this screwed on to the stick in order to do that. So let's get to the next one. Once we've got 2 in, that should stop it from rotating around. And get that screwed in. Started to come out, so let me just do the rest of this. Nearly there. Let's get them all lined up the same way. Now, I'm sure you guys are aware that these buttons are the Japanese style buttons rather than the American style one. What are the difference, you might ask? Well, it just happens that my old stick was based on the American buttons rather than the Japanese ones. See if I've still got one of these to hand. Let me just move the magnifier over here again. This is one of the Japanese buttons that I've got. It's one of the 24mm ones that I'm using for start, select and home. Bottom of the button's got 2 spades on that point straight downwards. you've got this collet that screws into it that will hold it in place. Some of them have a push-in sort of mechanism rather than having this. Also, if I just unscrew this, you can see on the side of this there is a tab in there and there's one on the other side. If you push both of these in, that will allow you to take the top of the button out, which is how you place artwork under the side of it. I'm not going to be doing artwork in the buttons today, but I did buy the right kind to allow me to do that in the future. Now, to compare that with the American button, I have this one here. Now, you'll see that it's much, much longer. Now, if you decide to use this kind of button, then you'll have to take allowances for the fact that it's much longer. Most of the cases that you get that are prefabricated are expecting you to use a Japanese one, so they won't fit these. The Japanese buttons, if you push them, they just move smoothly in and out. They don't really make that much noise. These ones, you can see that there's a big micro switch on the bottom. They click when you push them in. They require more force to push. They're not as fast as the Japanese buttons, but some people really like them. You'll also notice that rather than being domed on the top, these buttons have a concave depression. That actually feels really nice on your finger, and I kind of, that's one of the reasons why I got them actually. I figured I'd like them more than the domed top, and I do. If I could get a Japanese button with a domed concave top like that, then that would be awesome. These micro switches in the bottom actually do come out as well. You can move, unclip it from there and take that out. That's how you get it inside the cabinet from the top, and then you screw these up. I've got a friend of mine that's building an arcade cabinet who's going to want these, so I'm going to give them to him after I finish this assembly. But that is the difference between the Japanese and the American buttons. So let me just move the magnifier out of the way again and get rid of that. Just make sure these are all lined up now. Notice I've managed to get one completely different alignment to all the others. I'm not going to do these up super tight just in case I need to take them off, but I'm going to do them up tight enough so that I can game on them afterwards. And also so that I can do the wiring loom without them moving around, because, well, that would be bad. So if I flip this over the other way up, you can see the button layout now, and these two are tinted slightly. And if I hold it like this, you can see the curvature of those buttons rather than being straight out. Again, that is the difference between the Vuelix layout, which is the common layout you see for these, versus the Sega Player 2, which is what I've gone for. So anyway, I'm going to move this out of the way again and start looking into basically how those buttons are going to be wired. Should I do that bit next? I'm not sure. I know what we're going to do. We're going to start looking at getting the stick into the bottom of this. Now, let me see here. I've got these threaded screws here, which aren't the ones that fit in there, which is nice. Let me see what I've been given. Oh wait, hang on, those aren't the right ones, I don't think. No, they are the right ones. It would appear that Arts Hobbies has changed the design slightly since this was done. Now, as I said, I noticed the top of these are countersunk, and originally the design was that you screwed the stick in from the bottom and it went into threaded tops of these. Now, I can see problems with strength in that design, so that might be why they changed it. However, they neglected to mention this on their particular instruction set, so that might be something they changed afterwards. Anyway, the stick goes in with these spaces in between it normally. Now, I have got a Seimitsu stick, and this casing is more designed for the Samwa JLF. So we're going to have to move things around a bit to cope with it, but for the most part it should be the same. So let me get the stick. I've got that right here. Now, these sticks come in two different versions. You can see the micro switches under there, which are like the ones on the buttons I showed you. Normally there would be tabs coming out of the sides that you could put crimp connectors on, but this one's got a printed circuit board on the bottom of it, and if I just rotate it around there, there's a single connector that goes in. My old stick was very, very cramped for space, and I upgraded the stick in it, so I went for this design rather than one with the separate connections on, solely because it sat a little bit shallower. So now, if I remember correctly, I had it aligned so that the connector was pointing towards the bottom. So let me just grab a quick drink. Take the dust cap off, and I'm going to sit this up like that. So we want to go in with this alignment here. Good, those screw holes should all line up the same. A bit tight actually. I'll have to experiment with it a bit. Now, I want to put one of these screws through here, through this countersunk piece, and then put it through this spacer. I'll do two just so that it holds the spacer in place. Trying to make a break for it. Let's just hold that from the other side. Now I've got some nuts to go with this, so I'll put them on. Nearly went flying. I'm just going to do them up finger tight for now because I might need to realign things later on. Give it a bit of a wiggle and make sure it's aligned, and then just do these up a little bit tighter just so that it's very easy to control this. As I said, with this you don't want to do it up too tight. And that's the stick in place. I just put this flat on the deck again, you can see that in place. Then, no, I don't want to put the dust washer on the top just yet because the top panel is going to go wrong. So let's put the top panel on. Now, let me just undo these corner screws again. Now that the side panels are on, you don't have to worry too much about this will fall apart once you do this. So let's get them out. Like there's a bit of an overlap and this thing does get a bit flappy here with the artwork, so I might trim this down afterwards. But let's put the top panel back on and screw it in place so that it doesn't go flying. Dust washer off. That's yeah, that's good. Dust washer obviously goes on the top there. Right, let's get them up a little bit tighter, and then what I'm going to do is just make sure that this is better aligned by undoing these side pieces again and then just tightening up, just so the top panel can help pull these side pieces more into alignment. So let's just make them a little bit looser. Right, this thing's beginning to get a bit of weight to it now, so let me just hold this up to the camera so that you can see my work so far. There we go. And the purple is basically accenting the clear. I didn't want to just go for a straight clear case, I want it to have a bit of detail to it. And it's feeling really nice already. Next up, I need to put the ball top on. This is the original ball top that came with my stick. You usually get red ones with them. I've got something a little bit special planned for this stick, but not for right now. More about that will happen in the future, but let me just put this here and start putting this on. Now, let me just start getting this screwed on there. Now, the shaft of the stick is able to rotate in there. If I put it this way around and turn this, you can see the middle of the stick there is turning. So we don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my multi-tool here. I'm going to put the big flat blade in the middle of that shaft, and then I'm just going to hold it while I turn that there. Right, now that is going to hold it still. So we don't have to worry about the stick coming off when I'm fighting. So, yep, that feels good to me. Could kind of do with this being a little bit higher up, but meh. I can always put an extender on it. Right, now, next up we've got to worry about the wiring. So, let me turn this the other way up. Oh, I actually forgot I need to do these side buttons here need to go in. Now, these are the 24 mils versus the 30 mils, so we'll start putting them in too. Just grab that, how long we've been running. We've been going for about an hour now, so let me pop them in. Then we go on to the new trick connector. And that's the last one of them screwed in. As I said, not too tight, just in case I need to adjust it later on. Just in case I need to adjust it a little bit more afterwards. But for the most part, it should be alright. Now, let's go on to the new trick connector. Now, these are industrial connectors that the fighting game community seem to have really gone for. You've got a big, solid, cast metal housing for the USB plug rather than just screwing it straight in. And it's got one of the big square B sockets on one side, and it's got one of the A sockets on the other, which is the one that you're probably a lot more familiar with. Often when you buy these, it'll be the wrong way around, so you'll look on this side of it and you'll find the A socket, but don't worry about that. If you undo these two screws here, this middle piece will come out and you can turn it around and put it in the other way around. They're completely swappable. Also, you'll notice that on top there's a key here so that you can't inadvertently put it in the wrong way or upside down. It will slot in either way up into this housing when you're putting it back together, and then you just use the same screws to screw it back in with this cover plate, and it fits either way around and it'll hold this in place. Now this will go into the top panel there, and I need to sort out getting that in. That actually might be a little bit difficult, but no worries, we can actually take this panel back off again temporarily just to do that. Now the rest of these pieces are in place. It should let us do that without any real downside. So let me just slide that out of the way. And again, let's just get the top of old cable tie and just screw it through that. They're nice, they're malleable, they're square, they're good for this kind of thing. Stiff action, I'm just going to use the wires to hold it in place while I screw it in. Right, and one attached neutral connector, kind of. That'll do. I'm not going to foul anything, so it should be alright. And let's put this back on the stick, so gently does it. We don't want to send those nuts flying, so let's just pop that in there. Start feeding these through gently. You can use glue to hold these in place if you really want to. But I'm going to risk it. And that's 3. And that's 4. Make sure they're lined up before we squeeze in. Let me see where that was stuck on there. So there we go, that'll do. Needed a bit of persuasion to get in that hole. That's there. Start screwing on. I'm just a man that wants revenge and I confess I am full of rage and sin, locked inside this cage again, where evil reigns and people like to win. It may seem sweet, but we won't like the end. As soon as the top is already screwed on, I'm just going to use that for a while. Right, so now we've got the top panel on, we've got the side panels on, we've got this neutral connector in here. We just need to worry about the wiring, and that is the next big step for doing this. So move that over there. Rest. Right, now we've got that elevated up, so we've got a working platform. Might need to move the camera around later on. I've done some preparation for installing the wiring room, just so that I can design it better. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to take this bottom framework out and use the top one to hold it together, just so I've got slightly better access. So let me do that, and I'll start talking about the PCB. So that's 2 screws. That's 3 screws. That's another one. And that's the last one, so we should be able to just lift this out. Gently does it. Supports want to come with it, but I should get better anyway. Right, let me just put this over one side and we can see the internals of the stick there. Now, this is the Cthulhu PCB. Now let me just move that there. Now you can see that it's got these chocolate block connectors running down either side, and it's got a USB port. It's got some holes through it for mounting to the plate. Now this is the joystick connector that I've already wired up because it came straight out of my stick. I didn't bother to unwire it, so I just left it in place. However, the rest of it does need wiring up, and I'll go more into this very shortly. The case comes with these mounting plates that screw into the holes on the PCB board there, much in the same way as the sides screw into the diamond joints. So that's pretty much going to be the same thing. What we do have to do though is to make sure that all of the cables flow properly within the case so that it looks nice and tidy. So I'm going to be talking a bit about cable management. I'm just going to take that support out since it's not doing anything right now. The PCB connects up to the Nutrix connector in the top corner just by a short USB lead, which is behind me somewhere. There it is. So I want to get an idea of roughly where I'm going to be putting this. So let me plug this USB lead into the Nutrix connector, and I just want to see roughly where the PCB board wants to be. And this is actually a little bit longer than I thought it was going to be, and just nicely the PCB board wants to sit in this space here, which is where the raised buttons are, so that actually works out quite well. I've made some of the wiring loom already just so that we're not sat here for hours with me doing it, but I will be covering how to make that with the 3 on the side, which I've not made the loom for. The technique is exactly the same. So what I'm going to start doing is going into some of the theory behind the wiring loom. So bear with me a second, I'm going to move my support and get some paper so that I can explain this. In fact, I'm going to turn it around like that so you can see it a little bit better and just shoo the cat out from underfoot. Now, you've got your Nutrix connector up here, so that is going to be this bit here, let's call it USB. Now, obviously you're going to have to take a line out of that down to your PCB here. That's your printed circuit board. But you've got your buttons up here, so you've got, let me just make a simple thing up here. I'm just going to use 3 for the time being. Now, what you could do is you could run to each of the connectors of the buttons a separate line down to the PCB like that. Now, there are advantages to this. You can make things nice and neat and tidy and very aesthetically pleasing that way, but that's not the only way to do it, and that's not the way I'm going to be doing it this way. If I just demonstrate with some more diagram buttons up the top corner, these 2 connections, you only need to run 1 to each button, and the rest of them can be a common ground. So you can just have 1 each going to the PCB, and these 3 ones you can join them together using a short loop of wire like that, and then you can run all of them together down to the PCB using a common ground. That is what I'm going to be doing with this particular build. So let me just move this out of the way and go and put the stick back on my desk. So bear with me. Drink 2. Just put them back there. Then rest this back on top of those rolled up shirts. Now, let me just make sure they're all aligned and get my toolbox out. are the wires that I've done so far. I've done them in violet again to basically make them colour coordinate with everything. It's purely an aesthetic thing. You can do them in different colours, you can make them multicolour for all I need to know. I show this one. Basically each individual crimp connector goes on there and you squeeze it on, and I'll show how to do that in a short while. And what I've done with this is I've put some heat shrink sleeving over the top just to make it nice and tidy and make it less likely that they're going to short out afterwards. This here is that common ground that I was talking about. There are lots of little loops daisy chained together, and they're all going to connect to the buttons on the main part here and just bring a single line down to the PCB. Now with these, because I was having a lot of difficulty getting the connections of this really thick wire into these really little crimps, I soldered them. I'm going to go into that a bit later on, but I also just realised that I've not got any heat shrink on those. This is the heat shrink sleeving, so I'm going to... No, it's not the heat shrink sleeving, that is in fact cable ties with my heat shrink sleeving on. It's in a packet which looks exactly like that, and I put it down somewhere, bear with me. There is the heat shrink sleeving, so what I need to do is it does exactly what the same in the tin. You cut a piece off, you stick it over the connector, or you stick the wires through it and then put the connector on if it's really narrow stuff, and then you just heat it up and it shrinks, and then it protects your connection. So I'm just going to move this out of the way again so I can do that for you right now. 5, 6, 7. Right. Now you can use one of those little mini pocket blowtorches to do these and to heat them up. I don't have one of those, or rather I had one of them and I don't know where it went, or it broke or something like that. You can in theory use a cigarette lighter, or preferably if you've got one of those windproof lighters. However, the soldering iron I use is one that's gas powered rather than electric. It's good, you can just basically hold it like a pen, and it's a lot more manoeuvrable than the electric one, but it's also got a nice flame sticking out the side, so I'm going to use that. I just fire that up and use this to light it. You can see the flame coming out and then it does that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way along and heat all these up. So I'm just going to hold that in place so the edge of the heat shrink is up against the edge of that, and then if I heat it up you can see that it starts to reduce down in size. Just give it a good heat up all the way around. You can see it shrinking there. This is the last one. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this one under the magnifying glass so that you can see it a little bit more clearly. So, when you hold this like that, you can see the heat shrink sleeving over the top of the connection. You just hold them out of the way, and then just hold that so that it's in place, and then just put it over the frame like this. Up. Back and forth. Get the finger right to focus. Back and forth, turn it over. You want it hot on both sides. Just gently heat it up, and it shrinks down so that it covers up that connection, makes it so that you can't short that out, and it basically makes it good. I'm going to shut that off, that's all done now. And we can start worrying about getting this all wired up. Just put this over here. We want this way up, so it'll have to go this way around. And I'll run that like that. So that means that the nut holes for the PCB plate need to be this way up as well. So we've got them aligned, so let me just lift that off again, put that over here, and we can start putting this together. This is already pre-drilled for the Cthulhu board rather than having to use anything else special. And I'm just going to use some standard PC mounting parts. That's pretty much what I did in my old one, so it doesn't really matter that much. But you can just get stuff like that from your hardware store. If you've not got a Cthulhu board, it also comes with this one which has no holes in at all. So you can either drill your own or just cable tie the whole thing to it. It also comes with this cable holder, which I think will come in handy, so I'll put that in as well. Now, the hardware for that is still sitting in my old case, which is this one. It's made out of scraps of MDF that a friend of mine made into a box. So that is all of this junk in here is basically the old hardware I was using and the old wiring loom I was using. So let me go through this and find all the bits I need to put that PCB on there. So that. So this is going to get very fiddly. I'm just going to put that up there and make sure that it stays aligned with everything else I want to do. I'm going to put these in upside down just to make it easier to mount the board. So let me put these through here. And hold it sideways. And I'll put these mounting extension things just on the other side of that. Again, I don't want to do it like that time. I might need to adjust the board on these afterwards. So let's just put these on so that they don't fall out. And just set them down upside down. And then I'm going to put some of these paper washers over the top just to protect the board. Just get that through there. Another set of paper washers. I don't need that. Put that back to the box behind me. And then these will hold the board on thing. This diagram is the diagram of the Cthulhu PCB. Now, if I hold it this way up, you can see that this thing down the bottom represents the USB, and this thing at the top represents a bunch of solder spots that they've put onto the top of the PCB so that you can do things like multi-PCBing, just in case you want to run several of them, which some people do. They want to have something that will run both an Xbox and a PS3, or a PS4 in some cases. Please note, I did explain in the thread that while there are some games where this will work with on a PS4, that you, Skullgirls included apparently when that's released, not all games will, because, well, basically they want to sell updated sticks. But what you can do is you can take apart a pad, and then you can use the internal PCB in that and start soldering straight to it in order to make your own PCB. It's a lot more difficult than this, and I've suggested that maybe on a different stream like this I can just do that. So let me just move that out of the way and get back to this. Now, you'll notice it's labelled up on the sides with common things. You can see GND represents ground, which is the common one that goes to all of the buttons. You've also got, from starting, your punch 1, kick 1, punch 2, kick 2, punch 3, kick 3, arranged like that. For some reason, punch and kick 4 are over on this side, and obviously that's your small, medium and hard punch in that order. And punch and kick 4 basically correspond to the macro buttons in Skullgirls. You've also got on there the up, down, left and right on there, plus another ground which is there. There's lots of grounds. Everything uses a ground, but there's not one for each, so you don't have to, but basically you can screw all of your grounds into just one of these if you so want to. You've also got the selected start and home labelled up on here, and also at the top corner you've got one labelled VCC. This is 5 volts out. If you're running illuminated buttons, then that is what you're going to use to power them. Any LEDs or anything like that, you can run it off that VCC. So you don't have to worry about breaking it out of your USB line in order to do that. In a second. Right, anyway. Let's start with the wiring. So what I'm going to do is set this up basically so that I know which wire goes where, and then tidy the cables up and then start trimming them down afterwards. So I'm going to put all of the crimps at this end, and I've also got the ground. So what I need first of all is wire strips. These are wire strippers. They've got a sharp diamond edge, and it's also got this screw here so you can't close them all the way. The idea is that you set it beforehand so that the hole that it makes in the middle here is big enough so that it doesn't cut the core of the cable, but small enough so that it cuts the sheath on the outside. So we take a set of these, we put it over there, and you just basically pull that out, and it will give you the core of the cable in the middle and leave the sheath alone, and then you just basically grab it, twist it up so that it keeps the individual strands inside nice. If you're buying a cable for this, you can get multi-stranded cable like this, and you can get single core if you really want to, which basically means that rather than little filaments, it's got one huge big one. The trouble with this is it's not very flexible and it breaks very easily. You don't want this. For a job like this, you always use multi-strand wire. So let's start this by putting it into one of the grounds. Now we just put it this way around for alignment, using my reference guide. The grounds are up at the top corner here, so I'm going to put one of them in there. I'm doing this a bit. Where's my screwdriver gone? It's got the wrong bit in it. It's got the right bit in it. Right, me just unscrew that. You don't need to solder this. It's actually a touch long. You can fold the end over if you really want to. Gives you a bit more surface if you do that. You can just put the wire in the terminal, assuming it'll fit in there. Just undo it a bit more.
How does this make you feel?
Well, I really think you should quit smoking.
No, I didn't want to go in like that. I was going to have to go in a single way. I stripped a bit too much off, so I'm just going to trim it off with these snips. Try and get the sheathing of the wire all the way up to the terminal in the chocolate block, and then you can screw that up. That will keep the connection and it'll stop it coming back out. So let's do that up and we're good. That's nice and solid now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same for all of these and put them in to the connections for the punch buttons. This is going to be a bit untidy at first, but we will tidy it up afterwards. So let's start with these. Let's one. Put them over this side of the door. Right, so now we've got all of this spaghetti wiring coming out of this thing. So what I'm going to do is get the casing back and start plugging the right wire into the right button. And then what we do is we tidy the cables up afterwards. We could do it the other way around, but at the moment, because I've decided to use wires that are all the same colour, I won't be able to tell the difference afterwards. I did consider using labels on the wires, but I don't have access to a label maker. There's an idea for you if you want to try this. Just sit down to there. Go and get the case back and stick it on top of my shirts again. Right, now there is a gap in this which you can feed your wires through if you want to turn them around the other way up. Which might be sensible. Let's see here, that's going to go on the edge, and I think I won't go that way. I'm going to have these curl out from the top. So let's do that, and these wires will go here. Actually, I'm going to go backwards, I think. Yeah, let's do that. That's going to be the tidiest way. But these wires need to go with them and go like this. So it's always good to plan where your wires are going to go before you put them there, just so that you've got an idea of what you're going to do. So I'm going to put these like that, and these wires are going to go off to this. Now obviously these are too long right now, I'm going to trim them down later on. But for the time being, let's start plugging the right wire into the right button. Let's start with the grounds. I think I'm going to put these all on the middle ones, and these things, they just slide over the connections. Be firm, but don't force it if it doesn't want to go. You could end up bending or breaking your connection, and you don't want that. So there's that one, and it's 4 of them. I already measured these wires and made sure the loops were long enough before I started this. Come on. And that should be the last one there. Right, so that's the first set of grounds. Now we're just going to flatten these out a bit, or move them that way, because the bottom of the thing is going to sit in there and it's going to push down on them. So we want to have a bit of moving room for that. Right, next up, just sit them on there. Now you have to bear in mind that at the moment, from our perspective, these buttons are mirrored because it's upside down, so it's going to be low, medium, high punch and macro button on the end. So we need to wire them accordingly. And we need to use the reference chart in order to do that. So let's start with the punch buttons. Let me just untangle these a bit. It's always good to keep these relatively untangled while you're doing this, because it's going to make your life easy later on. Now, we want to do, there's the ground. So the first one is punch 1. So grab that, connect it to your punch 1. I want these things to thread through the middle, so I'm going to not be the wrong side of the ground. There we go. Now, let me just turn that up the right way. I get 1 punch, 2 punch, 3 punch. So these are all easy in order. So 1 punch, 2 punch, 2 kick, 3 kick. This one can just go on the edge like that. Oh wait, that's the wrong one, what am I thinking? And 4 kick is the last remaining one on the other side, so that goes there. And then there's the joystick buttons as well. Now, what I will say is I found the last time that I wired this up that the buttons on the diagram didn't necessarily correspond with Skullgirls. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug the joystick connector in, and then I'm going to test this. So let me just plug that in there. And what I'll do is I'm just going to plug my USB lead straight into this and not bother with the neutral connector. And I'm going to flip this the other way up. Start, select and home I'm going to worry about afterwards, so let me just turn this that way up. I'm going to get my USB lead like that. I'm just going to plug it straight into the Cthulhu. And then I'm going to put this somewhere safe where it's not going to short on anything. Okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to fire up the joystick test thing that's built into Windows and see if I can detect it. So let me just close Skullgirls temporarily. Now, let's grab the keyboard, get the rubbish off it, and just go hold down the Windows key, press R, you'll get the run dial with that. Let's just shoot off. It works better when it's turned on. Windows key and R, let's get the run dialog up, which you can't see on my screen at the moment, so let me just put this over the top of here so you can see the run dialog over the top of the chat right now. And you just type in joy.cpl like that. Then when you run that, you get the joystick testing. Right, let's go show you on this testing. We can go up, down, left and right, and then we can work our way through the buttons and make sure they're all registering something as we go through them. Obviously the start, the select and the home aren't wired to anything right now, but we can just bridge them with a piece of wire or something just to make it do that. So we know that the joystick is registering in the system and that we don't need to do more stuff to make that work. It's just Skullgirls acting up. So let's go back into Skullgirls and see if we can make that go. Right, okay, so let's go into this. Let's just go into training. Go into a training room. It doesn't really matter who it is. Start a random room. So hopefully I've got the AR turned off, so we can do that and move Filia out of the way. And we can just use the buttons here to see what they actually map to. Now, it would appear that at the moment my low punch and medium punch are flipped, so the same for the kicks. However, the rest of them seem to be mapping okay, and the macro buttons map as they should. So we just need to swap the medium and the low punch and kick around. As I said, this is something that I did when I built my original stick a year ago, and I just remembered that it did it. Right, so we know that the Cthulhu board is working, we just need to make an adjustment on it. So let me unplug that. Let's put my keyboard down and turn this the other way up. And it's just a matter of swapping the cables around on these two, which is the kick, the punch, sorry, the blow and the medium, and the same with the kick, which is the one at the bottom. So let's unplug that. And that one, let's just put that in there. And that. So now these are going to be right. They're going to marry up. They're going to be the right in the game when you push the right button. Now, cable management. We're going to need to get some cable ties and start actually tidying this up so that we can make some sense of it. Right, just give me a second. Right, so we just got people arriving home. I'm going to get some of these out and start making these cables more tidy. So let's get some of these out. We're going to need some cable ties. We're going to need snips again, which wherever I ended up putting those, it's a different pair of snips, that'll do. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bundle these up in a set of 4 first of all. So let's grab them. Let's put the first tie in the middle there, like that. Don't worry about wasting ties. These things are super cheap. Don't worry about making mistakes with the with this. Welcome to stream. Did I win? Sorry, I mentioned there. Yes, I built the case in the first hour, so when this goes back up to YouTube afterwards, it's all going to be there. So you can see how the case was built then. So let's just tease them out there and start adding these ones to the bundle. So we're going to want to curve these wires around there like that. So first of all, let's just make these cables nice and neat like that. And let's put another tie at the end here. And I'm going to show you a trick in a minute. Actually, that one was round that way, so I want this tie to also be round that way because I want everything to match. So yeah, let's put this tie here and make sure these are all nice and in line. So let's just do that one up there like that. Let's just make sure this is actually going to be nice and flat because we want this to, we want the bottom to go on okay. It might be a bit of a tight fit because of the heat shrink, but you know, we can worry about that. These will bend, it's not solid. So let's get that there. And trim that off. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this round a bit so that there's a bit more room. And then just snip that off. There's a trick to make nice cable looms, and that is rather than just, you know, scrunching them all together like this. Actually, I'm going to move my camera up just a sec. Rather than just scrunching them all together, stick another tie on, scrunching them all together and stick another tie on, that's just going to make it untidy. So what we want to do is just tease these out a bit so that they're running roughly in the right direction from each other. And then what you do is you go back up to where your tie is here, and let's just make sure that's aligned, yeah, and you just run it round at this end. You put it on loose, you don't do it all the way tight, you just put it on loose like that, and then what you do is you slide the tie along the loom like this. That way you can keep all of the cables in line from each other. And what you get is, if I do that, I don't know whether or not you can see. All of the cables are just perfectly in line like that. It looks really good, and you can basically just run that along like that, and then you do it up fully tight. Divine Wind, I'm partly self-taught. I have actually studied electronics in the past as well, so that is why I know how to do this. Plus that, a guy I knew when I was growing up was basically a contractor for defence, and he taught me a lot of really interesting tricks like that cable tie one. Right, anyway, we're going to bring this around because I want the cable to curl around like that and then go into the PCB. So again, we're going to take this wire tie, this cable tie, put it up against this. Actually, we want to do the, we're probably going to want to do the other ones here. Actually, I'm going to do them as a separate loom. I'm going to make them separate from these so that if I need to fix anything later on, I can. So again, I'm going to put these up here. Let's do this up loose. Get the cables roughly in a line and then slide the tie along. Try and get them the same distance from each other as well. It always looks good to do that. And then let's do that up fully tight. And just push these downwards as well because we want them to be neat, and we don't want them to foul the case as well, which they might do. They're actually sitting up quite a way, so they're probably going to butt against it, but we'll figure that out as well. Right, and then just trim the tail off. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start shortening these wires when they go into here, but not necessarily do that right now. I'm going to do them one at a time so that we don't lose which ones that we've got so far. In fact, I'm going to do that right now because what I'm going to do is I'm going to reuse these extra bits of wire to do the start, select and home. I'm going to make a wiring loom from scratch for these, showing you how I crimp all of these cables and put them all together, and how to measure up and how to get that all sorted out. So let me just see, we want this is going to be this way up, so let me just, I'm going to unplug this from the stick again since we've done testing. And this is going to be this way up, so what we want is the cables from the loom to go around the corner and into the side about there. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to measure up one last time. We don't want to have too much slack, but we don't want to have too little either, because you've got to allow for movement. Right, we want those screws to line up with that bit there, and that's actually going to be far down there, so that's going to curl around like that and go there. So let me see here, that's all good. It's going to go there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that up there like this, and it might be a good idea actually if I just quickly loop a cable tie through the foot of the PCB and then just wrap it around the wire just to keep it still while I'm working. We don't want that flapping around. So let's just do that up a bit. I'm going to cut this off afterwards so it's not a biggie. Right, let me just make sure this is all lined up so that before I tighten this up it's all in place. Let me just set this up how it's going to be actually when it's finished. So yeah, that's curling around like that, and that is in line. I'm just going to pull this out just a bit to give me a bit more leeway. Right, now this is held in place. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start shortening these wires down. We're going to take each individual one, we're going to follow it back to where it is, and then I'm going to trim it so that it only goes in there, so we don't have all of this extra stuff here. So let me just check on something actually. Yeah, we could do that actually. I could have this fed up in the middle rather than do that, but you know, this is easy. I'm gonna roll with this. So start off with, let's start with the ground wire. So what we're going to do is we want to allow, I just slide this up here, we want to allow enough space so that the wire's got something to strip off afterwards. So let's just bring that past it to the next terminal, and then we're going to clip that there. Then we're going to strip that wire with the strippers, and because it's a bit short, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all just move that so that we can see it a bit more easily. Where are we? There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use pliers to hold that wire still like that, and then we're going to strip the end off. We don't need to strip that much, so let's just do that much. Hold it still and do that. Right, let's get that back in. So let's twist the end up. Then we're going to get the screwdriver again, remove the excess wire from this terminal. Put this somewhere safe so we can reuse it. And then we're going to use the pliers again and feed that into the terminal. So, I don't know whether you're going to easily be able to see this, but let's just turn that around there and feed that in. And get that right up there. Then we repeat. It's going to be easier as I go along actually, because there's going to be a lot more wire to hold on to while I strip it down. So next is this one here, so let's take this one again. Let's wait, hang on, that was going to go into the ground, wasn't it? But there's double grounded that into, it doesn't matter. Okay, that'll do. That can go in that hole instead. So let's go on to the next one. So let's just again allow room for it to turn and allow some cable for it to be stripped. Trim the wire off. Get the strippers out. Strip the end of this off. Let's get the pliers and grab that again. Twist the cable. Obviously, rather than make all these offcuts, you could just simply make them that long in the first place. However, because I knew I was going to be doing these on camera, you didn't want to have to see me sat here making each individual one, so I made a whole bunch of these in advance. Right, and then just use the pliers to put that into the terminal like that. Push it in, screw that down. So that was going to the top one there, so let's grab that, let's snip it off, pop that there, let's grab the snippets and pliers again, there we go, twist it. actually underneath the magnifying glass so you guys can see it. So twist that, turn that. Let's come out, hang on. In the hole. Do it up. Right, and the last two of these ones. Now you can see from there, if I hold that like that, that is much, much neater than just having all of that bundled cable. It's a matter of planning it in advance to be able to do that. It's not really, you know, it's not really a bad thing to do. So what I'm going to do with these last two is I'm going to start with them. I'm going to allow the lead to cross over the top like that. It can be a bit of slack with this because it's got to roll around like that. So I'm going to leave more leeway like that rather than have it tight. So let's snip that, get rid of that. Again, do the thing. I don't think I quite have enough to loop it around my finger. So again, let's use the pliers. Take that off. Snip. Do with that. Put it into the hole in the terminal, which is that one there. And the same with this one. I'm just going to trim it down a bit. Now we do want these to be the same length, so let's just allow that much. Snip it. Strip it. I'm actually overrunning a fair while, so hey, let's stay with it and let's keep going. Let's get that in that hole and make sure that that's lined up nicely and just do up that last terminal. And that is the first part of the wiring room. Much tidier to do it that way. It's good practice to do it that way. Now I just want to make sure that these are going to fit flat against there. These are all basically, if I hold it like that, you can see they all pretty much stay in line, so they're going to be nice and flat against the PCB panel afterwards, which they should be once I've snipped this out of the way, which is, I'm going to, actually I can do that now. I don't need to hold any more to this, so let's just gently remove that now, so because we don't need it anymore, and these can move around a bit more freely, and you can see that these will all go flat now, so that will fit against the PCB panel without fouling anything. I will do the same to this, but I'm not going to do that on this part of the stream. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a quick bundle and stick another cable tie there, just to keep it nice and tidy until I do that. Let's just loop it around a few times. That'll do for now. Right, I need another tie, there we go. Right, that's just temporarily. It's not going to stay like that. I'm going to do the same thing later. So let me just trim that tail off and I'll deal with that later. Now, we're almost there. What we need to do now is to make the second loom for the start, select and home button, depending on which way around I do it. Normally I do home in the middle, so I just need to decide. I'll put select at the top because it's the one I use least. This one is going to be my start button, and I've got all this leftover wire to come up with something with. So let me just see what we got up here. We've got that. Whereabouts on the chart does it need to go? The select, start and home buttons are all up at the USB end of the PCB, so these leads are going to need to be quite long, but there's no fret. I've got a whole reel of this stuff, so it's not going to be a major biggie. Let's see, that one's the longest one I got, so assuming it's going to go like that, that's not long enough. I'm going to have to use fresh anyway, but the bottom ones we can use we can reuse some of these. It's not a major issue. So what I'll do is I'm going to take these longer ones of offcuts. Where are we? That one's quite long. That one is long enough. This one is long enough. That one's good. This one is good. And we'll use the rest to make a ground. So let me just plan this out. We're going to need to do one with the ground, one link and 2 tails, and this top one's just basically going to have a fresh one made. So this is just some advanced planning to get this to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the stick again out of the way, put it over here where it's not going to get burnt by my soldering irons and stuff like that, and just move this stuff out of the way. You just see which one of these are the longest ones. It's just remove the short one from the list. These things are still stripped on the ends, so we're going to make use of that and make sure these are nice and tightly twisted up. And I'm going to explain crimping. This is one of the crimps we're going to use. They're very, very small crimps. Now, I don't know how easy it's going to be to see on the stream, but the this side here is the side that connects to the spade connectors on the bottom of the button. This side here, you can see that there are 2 groups of basically bits of metal that crimp onto wires. The idea is that you use the outer piece to grab onto the sheathing to hold the wire still, and the inner piece connects to the core in the middle to make the connection. You can get special crimp tools that ratchet in order to do this. However, I don't have one and I couldn't justify buying one just for this stream. However, you can do it with pliers. It's not a big deal. These are actually a little bit too big, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just trim the ends off these wires just so that they fit in the crimp a bit better. That one should do. You'll be familiar with these if you work on cars at all, except the crimps for cars are much bigger. Some of the crimps also have a sheath on the outside of them as well, but you need to use the ratchet crimpers in order to use those rather than pliers, just because it squeezes through that sheathing in order to do it. So we're going to take a wire, we're going to put it in the middle of the crimp. Let's see if I can just do this so that we can actually see it and get that lined up. And you get it so that the sheathing is in the first bit and the core of it is in the second, and then I've got these pliers here that have got a nice flat blade on, they're good for it. We're just going to grab that, we're going to curl that around there, curl it around the core and squish it in the middle, and then we're just going to round that there and squish that there. Give it a good squeeze, and then that is, well, should have gone nowhere, but this crimp didn't work, so let's do that again. As I said, I've got lots of spare crimps because they don't always work. Let's just get that lined in there and pushed in. Let's squish that in place and crunch it, and do the same for the other bit. That's sounding a bit more positive. And I'm just going to make sure I do the same for the sheathing as well. So we're just going to loosely put it there and just curl it around the wire. And the same for the other side, give it a good squeeze. Right, that's much more solid. And I've got some more heat shrink around there someplace, which is this stuff. It's narrower than the first batch I was using, so we're going to use some of that too. I'm just going to pop that up there for now. Not only do we need one to go to the bottom button, but we need something to jump from one button to the next one. So just grab another offcut and just snag that and just stick it in the case and get a rough idea of how long it's going to need to be. It's going to need to be about that long. So let's do that. It's not an exact science, so you can just try to leave a little bit more than you need rather than a little bit less. So we need to make the jumps that long. So let's take these extra ones and we're going to trim them the same length. So 1, 2, 3. You don't need that many jumps. Now what I'm going to go into here briefly is soldering. I found that the crimps needed to be soldered for the ones which you've got multiple jumps on. So what I'm going to do is, because I've got to twist multiple wires together, as I'm going to take this one, I'm going to take a little bit more than I need. I also found out that while you're supposed to use the strain relief on it, I couldn't get that to work, so I basically just crimped the whole connector, the whole core on there for these jumps with the other ones. So let's prep the other jumps and reuse these offcuts. And then you start twisting them together. Now I find it's best to cross the wires over at the base of where the two bits of sheathing meet and then start twisting it, and so to try and get it so that each bit twists rather than one piece staying straight and the other one twisting around it. It's not as good if you do that, and that makes it nice and tight twists around there. And the same for this one. Just tease that stray piece straight, put them together like that, and then make sure both of them twist. Then we'll get that like that. And just twist this one up. Right, that is going to be the 3 connections that connect to the piece, to the buttons for the ground. Now we're going to do a little bit of soldering. Now, soldering is a simple form of welding. The solder's made of tin with, well, it used to be lead, now they're using something else because of EU regulations. But basically, this stuff will melt on the end of your soldering iron, and you can make it flow into the wire and make it coat it in metal that will then harden. You use it to join 2 bits of wire together. You can use it to solder wire straight to a PCB. You can use it to basically make stuff. It's relatively easy skill once you get it. You kids can learn it. I'm going to basically just pile up a couple of these just to act as a stand and weigh it down so that my wires don't move around, and just prop that up like that. You can use a pair of helping hands if you got it, but for the time being I don't have one, so we're going to do that. I'm going to try and get this in focus, but it's not easy to do so. That should be close enough. Right, so get your soldering iron and get your solder, which is this stuff. I've got it in a little dispenser like that. And I'm going to light my iron, so let's just do that again. Right, it takes a few seconds in order for you to get your iron up to temperature. So while I'm doing that, I'm just going to snag my trackball and see if I can actually adjust the music up a little bit. So let me see here. Guys, can you tell me how the music is and make sure it's not too loud? Is that still playing? No, it's not still playing. Right, let's just rerun that. That should do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the end of this and I'm going to just coat the tip in the solder. You can see that it's starting to, it's melted onto the end and it's smoked a little. The solder's actually got something in it called resin, and it's a core that runs through it, and it helps make the solder flow through the thing that you're trying to solder. Now, because I put a bit of solder on the end, it's going to make conducting the heat from the iron into the piece a lot easier. So you just put the tip against the wire and you start adding solder, and you just get it so that it melts into the wire. This is called tinning, by the way, just to put the solder into the wire like this. And then you work your way up and coat it in the metal like that. Now I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do it with the rest. Then I'm going to crimp it in, and then I'm going to solder it again to make sure that the wire is soldered to the crimp itself. So let's just move this along, and I'm just going to prop that up like that and just tin that one bit at the end. Right, so I'm going to turn my iron off now, and I'm going to start putting these crimps on these connections. It's still going to be a little bit hot, so do be careful if you're doing it yourself. Right, now where is that pair of pliers with the flat bits gone? There we go. Let me just move that out of the way. Squish them in there. So we're gonna, that's working. Right, let's just put that on there. Use the solder to conduct heat into the crimp. Because these wires are already tinned, it really helps get the solder in. It's not a great joint actually. Let me just tidy this up a little bit. Yeah, that joint was a little bit dry, so let's just heat that up and make it good. I'm going to do the same with this one. As I said, with crimps you don't normally do it, it's just this is very thick wire and very little crimps, so I'm doing it for make it nice and strong. Because I don't want this falling apart on me. So it doesn't go flying into the iron. Let's heat that up again, just like I showed you earlier on. Actually that's gone up too far, let's move that down. Heat it up on all sides, make sure that it shrinks down on top of the wires, and it makes sure that you don't get any shorts afterwards. You don't want that. It makes your gameplay bad if it does that. Again, let's put that in position. Shrink the heat shrink. And then I can turn that off, and that is one ground wire for the second loom. Now for these, again, I'm going to put some heat shrink on. Because they're only stuck on one end, I can just put the I can just feed the heat shrink on from the other end, so I don't need to worry about not having done that yet. So let's just do this quickly. In fact, I'm going to just fire my iron back up again. It's still hot enough that I don't need to start it. And just feed those on. Push these over the end of that. And again, let's just take the iron, let's just heat the end of them up. Just so that it's shrunk on. Right, now we need to do the last tail for that last button, which is up at the top of the stick. So if I just get this back and put it under here. This button here needs a much longer lead than the other two, so we can't use an offcut. We've got to use a fresh piece off the reel. So let's get the reel wire and just run it with my hand through there and roughly run it where I think it's going to go. So let's bring it up here to where the USB port is because it's up at that end. And just move that out of the way again. We'll trim that off there. And let's repeat the same thing. Let's put a crimp on the end of it. Let's put some heat shrink on there. And then we can plug these all in and start getting them wired up just as we did with the other wiring loom. So let me twist that up and get a crimp. Put a crimp on the end. That is nice and secure. And again, I'm going to move the PCB out of the way temporarily, if I can. I'm going to do the ground first. I'm going to put the ground towards the edge, towards the bottom, which in my perspective is towards the top. Actually, I'm going to do this from the top down. So we want to put this one there. There, this one. Just move that other side of this bit of loop. And then this one. I want to stick them through there so it's nice and tidy. Now I need to put the other tails into their appropriate thing. So we just need to work out which one's the long one quickly. So just line them all up and put them up. The long one goes at the top, obviously, so that one goes in there. Now we just run this down there because we want it to roughly follow the others. Actually, in theory, I could run it through here and it would work. Just to make it flow better. And the same with this one. These two, it doesn't really matter which way around it goes. So let's just get that in there. It's a little bit awkward because it fouls the other button behind it, so hopefully my elbow isn't completely in the way. Let's just move that there and try and do it this way so it looks better on camera. See, I think of you guys. Actually no, let me just grab my pliers and move it with that just so that I can get the angle. There we go. Now how am I going to run this? Again, I'll run that through this hole here, so these two will go together like that. Will I do that? Decisions. How am I going to run these? These ones are going to run over the top. These ones are going to run here. So, yeah, I won't do it this way. I'll do it this way. pull that down to there. I'll put a tie around these ones just to keep them organised. Where are my ties gone? There are my ties. Welcome to stream, Libby. I'm making a fight stick with a TEK case. I'm going to be putting all of this up on YouTube, assuming it recorded properly afterwards, just so that you can see what's happened so far. But we've built the box itself from scratch, and now I am making a nice wiring loom for it. So we are going to just tie this up here to make it nice and neat. So let's do that. And trim the tail off that. And then we're going to put the last tail in there. Which, oh, there we go. And now these are all going to go together. I'm just going to pull this ground wire up that way. And we're going to wire them up. Because there's only 3 of them, it should be reasonably safe to just work out which one it goes to where. And just waggle them around and work it out that way. So let me flip the PCB over like this. Now, again, what I'm going to do is, I know that the PCB is going to go here like this, and I've got these tails that are going to go and connect to the board. So what I'll do is I'm just going to temporarily use a tie to tie these all together, just to keep them lined up so that I can adjust the length of the cables afterwards. And I just want to hold them still. So right, let's just look on the chart again where they're going to go. So they're going to go up this end, and it's saying that it's going to be a little bit short. So what I'm going to do is, since it's going to go in through the top of the PCB anyway, I'm just going to trim that and just run it. I'm just going to trim all the same length, and I'm just going to roll with it. Actually, that's actually quite loose. I'm going to just tighten this up. And I've got a crimp that's falling off, so I'm just going to bend it a little bit to make it a bit tighter. You can do that, by the way. Then push that back. That's much better now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take these, I'm going to run the loom as I wanted to. There should be 4 lines, whereas the last one, there it is. I'm going to pull these all out here and just trim these so that they're roughly the same length. Just to make it a bit easier to manage. I think I need some new snippers. These ones are blunt. Right, let me just turn this up the other way so that we can see what we're doing. And I'll roll these up here as well. Now, we know that on this side of the PCB, from referring to the chart that I've got here, that the select and the start are on this side. So let me just check on that. Yeah, these 2 are start at the bottom and then select above it. So we want, this one is going to be start, so let's start with that. Let's get them, let's strip that off. Undo that. We want this to come from this side, so yeah, I'm going to roll that over the top. So start goes at the bottom here, that goes in this hole, like that, and then we do it up. Let's strip this cable. twist it up. And let's just get that in there. And screw that down. And that, for the most part, is the wiring loom done. Only thing that needs to remain is that I need to trim this down. But as I said before, I'm not going to do that on the stream because it will take too long. So, without further ado, I'm going to attach the PCB plate to the PCB itself. Wait, that sounded wrong. No, I'm going to attach the PCB plate to its mount. So this goes on there like that. I'm just going to pull these around here. And where's the screws that mount it? There we go. Let's pull this mounting plate out, and they're going to go on that one and that one. So I'm going to put 2 screws through the holes that we're going to use. And it's just going to be like side panels. We're going to feed a nut through the thingy on the side of the PCB plate here. I can hold it in such a manner that it's going to go. And then we're just going to screw into it. In fact, if I do that with it and tend to flip it up the right way, it'll work. So let's put that there and do this. Maybe a bit fiddly actually. And then we should be able to just screw this up and it will go. Trying to slide out the bottom, bear with me. There we go. Right, now this one I'm going to just do that. Feed that through there. Again, my elbow is blocking everything and I do apologise. Come on, get in there. There we go. Align these up. Right, let's get this nice and level. And do this up. I've got the wrong bit in the screwdriver, which isn't helping either. Where did that go? There it is. Let's put the right bit in the screwdriver. And then we just slot the PCB mounting thing into its hole. There's actually a piece of wire stuck in there. Let's just lift that off to get rid of it. Oh yeah, let's not forget we need to plug the USB line in. So let's plug the USB line into there. It's the wrong way up. Let's twist that around. That's important, that it doesn't work without that. Now, need to get the mounting stability plate here, which, as I said, it can be a nameplate if you so wish. And just fit that into there. Good, that's in. Then we put the border piece in again. Just get that lined up. Let's just pop that in there. Now, this is going to be a bit fiddly, so I'm just going to grab the PCB and move it around a bit so I can get these tabs lined up with these holes, and then push this border piece in. Right, that is now in place. So the last thing that needs to be done is we need to put the bottom on. So let's take the bottom piece out of its wrapping. Get rid of this. Let's last piece out of its protective baggie. I don't think this thing has way up, so I'm just going to roll with it. Now, as I said, this wiring loom needs to scooch down just a bit because it's a little bit long. So let me just bend these a little bit so that it's going to scooch down. I keep bending the tabs, I didn't want to do that. So it's just the heat shrink making it stiff. I could trim that heat shrink down a bit actually. Make it a little bit less stiff if I do that. That's a bit more like it. Let's just pop that on there. Now I need to put the feet on. So let me just move that out of the way. Let's get the feet. One in each corner. Then we thread each of these corner screws through the feet into the diamond joint on the other side. I'm just going to do it loose at first and then tighten it up, just to make sure everything is aligned perfectly. Right, let's just tighten these up a bit. Nice and tight. Let's just move that out of the way and get rid of these. And there we go. That should be a completed stick. So next up, let's give it a little bit of a test. So I'm going to connect it up and then I'm going to fire up Skullgirls again and we're going to see whether or not everything is working again. So let me just plug that in there. Hopefully you've just heard my machine go ding because I've not got my speakers on because I didn't want to feed it back. So right, let's test this out. So let's go to training. Go to the training room again and I'm just going to pick random characters. Just so that I can see the overlay and see what's going on. So, stick is working. The main 6 buttons and the 2 macro buttons are now aligned as they should be. Start button works, the home button isn't really set to do anything, and the select button is definitely not working. So I just need to check the wiring on that one. That will not take long at all. But aside from that, that is 99% of the stick built. So yeah, that's that's all good to me. I just need to get used to this, the ball top being slightly lower down than I was used to from my old build. But you know, that'll come with time. All I need to do is figure out what that last button is doing, and I don't know what that is. So I think that is pretty much it for the stream. So thank you very much for joining me. And hopefully I've done something useful for you and shown you how this build is going to work. Thank you very much for joining me.